Larry Pollock here with Dr. Guillermo Escalante, a longtime friend, and we're going to be talking about dangerous bodybuilding protocols and some other things. I met Guillermo backstage at a bodybuilding contest. I think it was Muscle Beach, like 20 years ago. We were both competing. And traditionally, after we do the Cal or the Nationals or USA's, Muscle Beach contest was like the following Monday, Memorial Day or whenever it was. So we'd all go do that just for the fun of it. And so we both have been competing forever and a day. And Guillermo has published several publications. He wrote a whole thing, I believe it was for NASM, a bodybuilding pre-contest protocol. Basically, you can go ahead and explain it a little bit more in detail, the bodybuilding program that you put out there for pre-contest.
Yeah, absolutely. The National Academy of Sports Medicine. I was basically the lead expert in putting together that. It's a 20 chapter book that covers bodybuilding A to Z. So it's an entire certification specifically for physique and bodybuilding. Now, of course, it covers everything from anatomy, physiology, nutrition, metabolism, dietary supplements, on drugs and safety, training, of course, all of the intricacies, and then it really dives deep into a lot of those. So I was able to put together a panel of about 20 plus experts that are both practitioners and scientists. In fact, a lot of the scientists are actually practicing bodybuilders and or coaches. And then I have some that are just bodybuilders or physique competitors, men and women. Some IFBB pros were part of the folks that were contributed to the book, and then also some people that are very deep into the science of physique science. So very comprehensive, and it's basically offers a starting point for anybody that wants to get their feet wet into what physique and bodybuilding is, and what training entails, and nutrition entails for getting physique competitors ready. And I think it's great for the average competitor as well, just to kind of understand and to ask the right questions to the right coach, and make sure that you're not maybe falling into bad hands, and working with coaches that are potentially putting you in danger.
So Guillermo actually, well, there's been a debate lately versus science versus old school experience. And who's right, the old coaches and old time bodybuilders who have been around forever and day doing this, or the scientists that come up with these new theories. But Guillermo actually brings to the table, he's a scientist and he's a professor at a university that studies this basic subject, and he's been a competitive bodybuilder on a high level for at least 2 decades. Over 2 decades, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, exactly. Over 2 decades competing. And then I've been at the university now for 13 years. And my lab focuses.
We can't hear you right now. You're cutting out. Oh, I think we just lost him for a second. Hopefully he gets right back on. I think he's got a connection problem. Okay. I think he had some technical difficulty there. Hopefully we get back on right now. Okay, he's back. Can you hear me? Oh, he was back. No, he's not. Okay. Well, we're going to get into this. Hopefully, he gets right back on soon. I know he's trying to log in right now. He's logging back in. Yep. Thanks, guys. Sorry for the delay. He's logging back in right now. All right. Can you hear me?
Hey there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. All right. So you were saying you had done this program. You worked with several pros on it as well. And basically it was about contest prep, the in and outs of contest prep and how to do it, from my understanding.
Yes. So that's what that the certification covers. Yes.
Specifically bodybuilding contest prep, so you guys are clear about that. So recently, actually just the other day, Dorian Yates was on a podcast with Chris Cormier, and he was asked the question if Nick Walker could win the Olympia. And Dorian gave his opinion on, he thought Sampson could possibly be a winner based on structure, but he said if
I can barely hear you. Hang on, bud. I can barely hear you. Let me see if I can move places here and see if I can get a better connection.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Let me try to come over here. Because this is like awful.
Yeah, it's definitely your connection.
Yeah, my Wi-Fi, my router's down over here, and I have no Wi-Fi. And then now I'm trying to see if okay. Let me see if I can get this.
Better now?
Okay, let's try it now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. As I was saying, recently, Dorian Yates was on a podcast with Chris Cormier. He was asked if Nick Walker could win the Olympia this year, and Dorian said, "Well, he thought Sampson structurally was a favorite, but Sampson, if he doesn't come in the best shape, then that Nick definitely could win." And Lee Haney came out and made a statement that bodybuilding has lost its way, and that if we keep going in this direction, we're going to lose the sport, and bodybuilders shouldn't look like this. And then he went on a podcast last night with Ron Harris, basically backing up what he said, saying that, he doesn't think Nick Walker is a good representative for bodybuilding at his height, having that much muscle. He looks like he's going to die, and young bodybuilders are scared to compete in bodybuilding because they don't want to look like they have to take all these drugs like Nick Walker and, risk their health and all of this sort of thing. And I thought that was, by the way, Lee also said that he thought that Sampson and Andrew Jack and Hottie were great, and they had great symmetry and everything, and they were great. But Nick Walker, he doesn't like him or the way he's built. And Nick Walker, his genetic structure is what it is. He can't help his structure, and I personally don't think it's that bad. Some people, they prefer the Andrew Jack or the Sampson taller guy. I don't think, Hottie has a bit smaller waist, but his structure, he's got a ton of muscle too. So I can't necessarily say that Nick Walker is doing anything more dangerous than the rest of them, just based on how he looks. That's all speculation.
Yeah, I agree. It is definitely speculation on, you can't tell what a person's doing, and the reality is there are people that are hyper responders and hyper responders. So and you're going to find a spectrum across all of these, right? And there's people that are going to have effects, negative health effects with small dosages, and you're going to have people that can tolerate high dosages and not have as the same negative consequences. So there's a lot of inter-individual variability, and there's no way you can look at somebody and say, they're either taking too much or too little. I mean, you're right. Structurally, it's just his structure. I mean, Nick is just he's a little bit blockier, but he's been able to build a ton amount of muscle and on that structure. And I mean, yeah, everybody's going to have their preferences in which structures they prefer. Um, but yeah, it is not possible to look at somebody and say, oh, they're just taking X, Y, or Z, or more compounds than other individuals. You can't tell.
Yeah, I mean, Samson's 330 pounds right now in the off season. So how can you say that Nick Walker getting over 300 pounds, but him getting over 300 pounds is different? I mean,
Yeah.
they're probably taking the same things. They're just structurally built differently. We don't know. We don't know what Nick takes. Only Nick knows what he takes. And I don't necessarily
Yeah.
agree that, based on what I know about Nick, I'm sure he takes, what he needs to compete at his level. But I don't think he's reckless about it, that he's just taking, shit tons of gear unnecessarily. He's been in this for a few years now, and he's managed to actually improve over the years. And usually when people are just like pushing massive amounts of gear, you can see certain side effects. And I think Nick actually has improved over last year. So whatever he's doing, it seems like he's doing it right.
Yeah, and the reality is I mean, in today's day and age where we have so much medical information available, right? And we know the health consequences, and we have a lot available for us to be able to look at. So at the end of the day, if you're just choosing to put your head in the sand and not work with healthcare professionals, not do lab work, not run other medical tests, then that's really on you, right? I mean, there's a lot of information available out there in I'm going to say you can't eliminate the risk, you never can, but there's a safer way of doing things and trying to mitigate those risks. And then at the end of the day, looking at your overall health biomarkers on a regular basis. I'm talking, at least 3, 4 times a year and year to year, and comparing that data and seeing what the trends are. And I think you can definitely modify what it is you're doing and how much you're doing, the types of things that you're doing, so that you can mitigate those risks. And then again, if you're just going to redline everything and go through, then that's really on you. Or if you're just not looking at it, then that's really on you.
Well, we've both been competing for a long time. And I think we agree that when it comes to PEDs and other performance enhancing drugs, there's a point of diminishing returns where
Absolutely.
you've taken as much as your body can utilize to achieve whatever effect that particular thing is going to do. And any more than that is not going to be beneficial and probably going to go against you. In other words, you take too much androgens, your body can't use it all. It's going to aromatize, it's going to turn into estrogen. You're going to make more DHT, more SBHGH, and all this other stuff. So your body just can't use it all. You're just going to hold a lot of more water. Even growth hormone, there's a limit to how much your body can use with any of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it kind of comes down to really everything that we know about bodybuilding, right? I mean, like, you take a gram of protein per pound of body weight, that's good. You take 3 or 4, you're not going to really, grow significantly more muscle at a certain point in time. Same thing with training, right? We know that 3 sets is better than 1 and 6 sets is better than 3, but 50 sets is not necessarily better than 15 sets. So there's a point of diminishing returns on everything that we do. And again, that's highly individualized, but you kind of have to find, where those things work for you. And that's the importance of keeping that data for yourself, and then you being your own scientist and your own advocate, keeping track of your own records and logging things and seeing what is working for you individually.
And we're going to talk about some dangerous protocols that are being used in bodybuilding. And I'm not saying that the top pros are necessarily doing these things, just that we know that people do these things. But I want to start off by saying both of us have been competing for a long time. And you can, Guillermo, tell me if you agree with this statement. I think we've both been in condition as anybody on stage at some point in our career as you could get.
I'd say I've been up there. Yep, absolutely.
I've competed.
And I've seen you as well.
I compete at 5% body fat, and I've never taken, DNP or, done any crazy shit other than being on a very strict diet, and most of the time, lately I don't even have to take, my diet doesn't have to be that strict. I just don't put on body fat anymore. Just so many years of training and competing and eating clean. But let's talk about like some of the protocols. I think things, started getting out of hand. Well, first of all, you have two scenarios. You have what bodybuilders really do, and then you have what people say they do. And what I mean by that is, Boston Lloyd came out and he said the bodybuilding pros are all lying. They're lying about the amount of gear they take, and they're really taking 10 times more. And he was right to a point. And what I mean by that is, and I'm going to probably piss somebody off right now, but like Lee Haney got on his podcast with Ron Harris, and he said, like before a contest, he was taking like a little bit of Deca and I think a little bit of Tess and some Anavar. And I mean, he mentioned like a cup, 100 milligrams of this, 100 milligrams of that. Okay, I trained with those guys at World Gym while they were competing in the Olympia. I know the popular thing at that time was Tren. It was parabolin or Tren acetate and EQ. That was like what everybody was pushing right then. And this was before the what you call it, pump and pose, the synthol. But we were using a cycline for the site enhancement. So that's what the protocol basically was. And that's what most of the people were on in the 80s when Lee was Mr. Olympia and Rich Gasperi was competing. And that's what we were doing. And I was training in that gym with them. And no, they weren't taking 5 grams of shit, but they were taking probably, 1.5 grams, 2 grams, everything combined before show. So some of that is a little bit misleading. Now I know prior to that, like 80s bodybuilders, early 80s or late 70s, they were using like nandrolone, pretty much nandrolone and Anavar, that was it, or nandrolone dianabol. And then they switched to the EQ and the Tren. And then growth hormone just came in kind of like the tail end of the 80s. That's when we first started to see the GH, but it wasn't so prevalent. It was hard to get. So Boston was right in the extent that some of these old timers like Platt saying he took 100 milligrams of Deca for a contest. I don't believe that story because I trained with Mike Menser and I told this. We took 300 milligrams of NPP 3 times a week. So that's 900 milligrams of nandrolone 3 times a week. That's not nothing, but it's also not 5 grams of freaking Tess and Anadrol and Trembolone. So I think at my top competing, I would use probably between 1,500 milligrams and 2 grams of gear total in a contest prep. Like we're talking about like right the last month of a prep when I'm really pushing as hard as I would. And I didn't really went above that. Well, actually I tried going above that one time. This Italian bodybuilder that I just competed with in the, it was the Excalibur. And he told me the secret is to take 4 grams of Tess a week.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
Yeah, I never heard of that before, but he was pretty jacked. So I decided to give it a shot. I think I did it for 2 weeks.
How'd you
And
feel?
I felt like shit. I just felt bloated. I felt like sick, and I wasn't getting any stronger.
Right.
And I felt crappy training in the gym. So I think I did it. I think I made it 2 weeks of that. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. It's not doing anything for me. And I didn't stop. And generally off season, I would take maybe everything combined, like a gram total. And we're talking nandrolone tests. And my stack when I was at my biggest was nandrolone tests and anadrol. And I was taking, I remember when I was 250 pounds, this was the biggest I ever got. And Scott Mendelson had been training with me, but I had stopped training with him. I hadn't seen him for about 6 months, and he came up to my gym, and he's like, "Damn, what the hell are you taking?" I said, "Really, not that much. I was taking 400 milligrams of tests, 300 nandrolone, and 50 milligrams of anadrol a day. So that's like, what was that, a gram total?"
Yeah.
And that was the biggest and strongest I have ever been. That's when I squatted 820 pounds, benched 555. But I was just training my ass off and eating a ton of food.
Right. I
And
think, I want to highlight those two things. I think those are the two things that people often overlook, right? It's like you were training hard and eating quality food, eating enough of it, right? I mean, like
yeah,
people underestimate the power of those two things. And I mean, anything else, it's like, yeah, it's going to help, but if you're not doing those foundational things, you're not going to really get anywhere.
no, that's the main thing.
Exactly.
And since then, I mean, now I'm not trying to be 250 pounds anymore, but I'm still training my ass off and I eat clean. But now all I take is 300 tests, 200 nandrolone, NPP, and that's it. That's it. And that's all I need to train as hard as I can train. And I don't feel like I'm going to get any bigger at this point in my life taking more drugs. And I'm still able to train as hard as I can and seem to recover with that right there. Oh, and a little
Yeah.
bit of GH. I take on training days two units prior to training and 1 unit in the middle of the night. So that's my whole program right now. But of course, I'm not competing and I'm not trying. Now, Guillermo is getting ready for a competition right now. And I just saw him at the Cal, and he's in pretty damn good shape. You're pretty lean right now. Which show are you doing?
So I have a few on the radar yet. I haven't fully decided which one I'm going to dive into because I want to make sure that I'm where I want to be. So my first one on the radar would be the West Coast Classic, which is in Riverside on June 28th. That would be my qualifier, and then go on to the next week to the Universe. But if I feel like I need a little more time, then I'll go ahead and wait until July 12th in Vegas and do the qualifier there, and then follow up with Masters Nationals and or the USA's. Um, so that's the goal. So I feel good. My body's responding well, but I'm being very critical, and I want to make sure that I don't want to go on stage and say it's like, oh, I need to lose an extra 4 or 5 pounds of body fat. I want to know that I'm where I need to be. So that's why I'm letting my body kind of dictate, and I'm just working hard every day and just seeing how it progresses. But so far, the progress has been really good. I've been very happy with where I am, and it's been coming along. So I still have 3 more weeks. I'll probably make a decision in the next 14 days as to whether I do that June 28th show, or I'm going to wait to do the July 4th or the July 12th show.
Well, when I saw you look pretty lean. It doesn't look like you have very much far to go.
Yeah, I don't think I really do. I think I have maybe about 5 pounds body fat at the most to lose, which is pretty easy to do in 3 weeks, obviously.
Yeah, you definitely can do that in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about some dangerous protocols that have been used. And I'm going to kick off. Someone said, don't bash DNP. Okay, well, I'm going to give you my thoughts on DNP and then Guillermo can chime in on this, what he thinks. I first heard about DNP, I think back in the 80s or 90s, when I was competing a lot. And what I heard was that it would heat up your body, and you could heat up your body to the point where you could cook your organs and you could die. And that's all I needed to hear to know that I didn't want to mess with that. And, the other thing is, I competed at 16 years old and I was shredded. I competed at 18 years old and won the USA. I was shredded. All my contests I competed and I've been shredded. So why in the world would I need to take something that would cook my organs or potentially cook my organs to get in shape? I mean, for me, I'd just rather just eat less food and do some more cardio or train a little bit more to get in shape. It just didn't even make sense to me.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. To me, it's people nowadays. And for a long time, it's been around for a long time. I mean, the compound was around in the 1920s. In factories, and people were losing weight, and it was medically prescribed for weight loss until people started to die. But it does work in the sense of metabolically. Uh, it is going to help essentially speed up that metabolism, but it will, because of the mechanism of action, is going to increase your core body temperature, because it can actually literally raise your core body temperature to 104, 105, 106, which is going to be that critical point where now there's a point of no return. So what you why you would put your body into that, I have no idea, because the reality is you can spend, like you said, a little bit more time. Instead of doing a 12-week prep, you do a 16, a 20, a 24-week prep if you need to. Or maybe you don't get in way out of shape in the off season. You maintain yourself a little bit leaner, so that way you don't have to lose 30 or 40 pounds to get ready for a competition. You stay maybe within 15 or 20, maybe 25 pounds, which is reasonable to be able to lose that in a 20-week period. Secondly, you just need to be consistent with your diet and your training, and then you're able to get to lower body fat levels safely without putting your body at risk. So to me, it's just again, it's an unnecessary shortcut. The risk to benefit ratio is definitely not worth it. And there are many other strategies you can do. So to me, it's like you have so many tools in the toolbox. Why choose the unsafest tool that could put your body, that could cause you to die? To me, it doesn't make any sense when you have a million other tools you can use, and then just being strategic and having a good plan and implementing that plan will help you get there safely without putting your body in undue stress.
Well, there's somebody here trying to justify his DNP use. And I'll just say, we just had a girl who was at the Arnold Classic die from DNP, and she wasn't even competing. And, you're saying, well, you could take a low dose and it's safe. Things are black market these days, and you don't know what necessarily is the correct dosage of what you're getting. You might think you're taking 200 milligrams, and it could be 1,000 milligrams. Who knows what happened? And someone said she overdosed on diuretics. I heard it was DNP, not diuretics. That's what I heard. But
Well,
anyways,
I think, yeah, regardless, diuretics is kind of next on my list, right? That's another one that's, so misused, so unnecessary to use. And we just see so much medical trauma, and when we hear people dying acutely on stage or just before or right after a competition, gosh, 90% of the time there's a diuretic involved, and that it's so unnecessary to use the diuretics.
Yeah, diuretics is another one. I know they really pushed diuretics hard back in the 90s, and there was a reason for that. Guys in the 90s took a lot of androgens, and they didn't have anti-estrogens like we have now. You didn't have Arimidex, Aromacin. and what is it, letrozole. You didn't. They weren't. All you had was Nolvadex, and if you were taking a shit ton of androgens and holding a shit ton of water, which some of these guys did, like they're taking Anadrol and a lot of tests before a show, they had to get that water out. Now we have other ways. You can, instead of taking tests and Anadrol, you take Primo, Masteron, Anavar, things that don't aromatize. And if you need to, you can take an aromatase inhibitor. So you're not going to hold a lot of water. So you don't even need a diuretic. My last competitor we took to the show, we probably didn't need a diuretic, but we used half of a diazide the night before the show. That was it. And we probably didn't even need that, but we just did it because we thought maybe he'll be a little bit tighter. But that's half a diazide. Now, I can tell you my personal experience with diuretics. When I started, the protocol that my first coach put me on was like aldactone for a week. And then you took some other strong diuretic the day before the show. And, I just got flat from that. And I do remember this one. I competed at the Cal one year. This is in, I think it was mid-90s. And I came off the stage and right after prejudging, and I know I was peeled because I'm always peeled in shows. And I came off the stage and Tom Prince was standing there. I knew Tom Prince from training at Gold's. And I walked up to him. I said, "So what did you think?" He goes, "Well, I think you got a little tiny film of water." And he goes, "Here, take this." And he gave me this white pill. And he said, "Take this Lasix." I didn't even know what a Lasix was. And I don't know why I was listening to him, but this is Tom Prince. And he's like a pro, a big, huge pro. So I'm like, okay, well, if Tom Prince has to take it, I guess I will. So I took this Lasix, and me and my girlfriend go out in the car between night show. I mean, prejudging and night show, we're just going to hang out in the parking lot and wait because there's nothing else to do. I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot, and I start getting the weirdest, like it was like not cramps, but like pulsating in my hamstrings. It felt like all the blood was just rushing through my hamstrings, and they were spasming really hard. And I thought about, these bodybuilders. I'm trying to think of Mohammed Benazizi dying and the other people dying from the diuretic. And this is like maybe 30 minutes after I took it. And I just thought to myself, you know what? I am not dying for a fucking bodybuilding show. And about 100 yards in front of us, there was a liquor store. I beeline my car straight to the liquor store, went in there, got a whole thing of salted cottage cheese and a gallon of water. And I downed that whole thing in like 15 minutes. Because I was like, whatever this is happening, I'm not dying from fucking whatever he just gave me. After that, I really, really didn't mess with diuretics. The most I would use is, like I said, diazide before a contest, and very little.
Well, and I think there's a couple of things with regards to the verbiage that's used in bodybuilding, and I think there are a few instances where people are indeed retaining a little bit of water, but the reality is 9 times out of 10, most competitors that are up there, when they're told that they're quote unquote holding water, they're really just fat. They need to lose more body fat, and they're not holding water. And what I think irresponsible coaches do is, instead of telling their athlete, "Hey, you need a couple more weeks or another 3 or 4 weeks to really get ready to be leaner and stage ready," they try to do this 1 week, 10-day protocol to quote unquote do magic, and then this is where they start dumping some of this stuff. And of course, you're going to lose weight because you're dehydrating the muscle and everything else. And it's counterintuitive. I mean, it really goes against basic physiology, right? I mean, our muscles are like 75% water. We are in bodybuilding, so we're basically trying to deplete um, a vital part of the muscle that you're really trying to show. And I've actually done research on this. I published some studies where we actually looked at competitors. I did surveys of studies, competitors backstage before they were competing. I asked them what kind of peak week protocols they were using. So I asked them about diuretic use. So I have documentation as to the types of diuretics, the quantity of diuretics that were being used, and then in addition to that, what other practices they were doing. And where you see it get really scary is you see some of these competitors that are actually not drinking water, for up to 48, 72 hours sometimes, or minimal water. I'm talking like 8 ounces, 16 ounces, a day at the most. And then on top of that, they're taking a diuretic, sometimes a loop diuretic on top of that. So it's like it's insane what we see. And then the other thing that people look at, well, you got to look at the intracellular and the extracellular water. We're really just trying to get rid of the extracellular water, and the goal of the diuretic is to get rid of the extracellular water. I'm like, well, your body has its own protective mechanisms to really maintain a very specific ratio of intracellular to extracellular water. Um, you can fool it a little bit, and there's a little bit of fudge room, but your body very quickly will respond. So you may be able to time it just right. But when we actually look at the science and we actually collected the data, interestingly enough, we measured hydration status and how dehydrated these athletes were. And we also measured intracellular to extracellular water ratios in these athletes backstage. And sure enough, we see a very strong association with individuals who are more dehydrated. They actually have higher extracellular water and lower intracellular water, which is exactly the opposite of what you want, right? So you have less water inside of the muscle cell and more water, outside of there. So you're actually blurring what you're actually trying to do. And those that were better hydrated actually have a much more favorable ratio of intracellular to extracellular water. So physiologically, it actually makes no sense to do this. And when you're cutting water, again, I never cut out water, ever. I would say you can cut down water, appropriately. Obviously, you don't want to drink a ton of water before you step on stage because you're going to have a distended gut and whatnot. So you definitely can cut down your water intake. Maybe start tapering it down a little bit the last 12 hours or so, 16 hours, but you should always have water in your system. But when you compound these two things where people are now not drinking, not taking sodium, then they're telling them to drink minimal to no water, and then on top of that they're adding a diuretic. I mean, you're adding insult to injury. And I mean, your your whole electrolyte imbalance there is going to wreak havoc on your heart. And then this is where we see these major problems. And I saw it backstage when I did medical coverage for 7 years for Muscle Contest, for the USA's, for a ton of pro shows. I mean, I don't know how many competitors I had to tend to backstage. Luckily, we never got to the point where we had major issues. Nobody died in my cloth, thank God, right? But I did see the symptoms of this because I knew the questions to ask. I would check their blood pressure. One of the symptoms of dehydration is hypotension, so the blood pressure is going to be low. They're going to have a very weak, thready pulse. They're going to have muscle cramps. They're going to potentially feel disoriented. So you have a lot of these things that are going on, and how are you going to perform on stage, right? So and then I would ask the right questions, and I would get the same things. It's like, oh, coach told me not to drink water, or I haven't had water in 24 hours, and I took this diuretic. I took this stronger diuretic, last night, and then I mixed these diuretics together, which is another issue that you have. So yeah, it really complicates things. So to me, like, that's the number one pet peeve that I have in competitor in coaches is when they're prescribing diuretic use. It's really irresponsible and it's completely unnecessary.
Well, there's that, and there's also the competitor has to take some personal responsibility. And
Absolutely.
I can tell you for myself, when I did my first contest at 16, my coach had me on distilled water and no salt. We had to eat on paper plates with plastic utensils because God forbid if you had any salt, you're going to hold water. And then we took diuretics too. And yeah, I was lean and shredded, but I was flat as shit, but I was the only one shredded at that time, so I won anyways because everybody else was fat. But over the years, I learned that, first of all, distilled water is dumb because you need
Right.
minerals.
Yes.
It's just dumb. and you need salt, because without salt, you can't get a pump, and you can't your your blood doesn't pump without salt. You need salt. So you're going to be flat as hell if you don't have any salt as well. But there's been times when, even when I knew better, we get in our own head. And like, even though 2 days before the show, we look like shredded, full, ready to walk on stage. And then it's like, oh, I want to get even like more shredded. Never mind, my skin's all like saran wrap and I can't find any fat anywhere, but I'm going to get even like a next level of shredded. So then we do like some crazy shit. Like I remember one contest, I did a warm-up contest before the North Americans, and I was full, big, about 215 pounds, and peeled, won that show. Then I'm like, oh, I'm going to get even really shredded for North Americans. So what I do, I'm like, I'm going to do cardio this week, which like at that point, I usually don't do cardio because my metabolism is going so fast. Like I can barely hold on to weight. But my cardio was like, I'm going to go walk on the beach for 30 minutes every morning, fasted. And I'm going to take clenbuterol while I do it. And then I did that. And then I tried to cut water. I didn't drink water, and I tried to carb load. I got to the North Americans flat as shit. And when I tried to carb up, I couldn't carb up because there was no fluid. And without fluid, you can't intake carbs. So I'm literally like in the Cheesecake Factory eating like pounds of fucking food. And it's just sitting in my stomach. So what do I have? I'm flat and my stomach is distended because the food can't go anywhere. And I look like dog shit. And it was my own fault because I got in my head and got paranoid. After the show, fly back to Southern California. And I like, okay, Monday's the Venice Beach. I talked to my friend who was competing with me, my training client. And let's go do that for fun. I walk into Smart & Final. And I got a half a gallon of rice milk. And I just drank the whole thing. I show up at Venice Beach. I weigh 215 again, peeled out of my mind, freaking dry everything. I needed the fluid. I literally went from 215 down to like 198 and then back up to 215 where I should have been. And that was just all in my head thinking, I'm not ripped enough.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we've all done silly things. I mean, I've done plenty of silly things myself, and I've been my own experiment in a lot of different things. And I see the mistakes, and I know when I've been on and when I've been off, and it's very obvious, in terms of the different protocols and the notes that I've taken and over the years and the 20 plus years competing. And one thing that you brought out to highlight right now, which is very important, is the importance of salt. I think one thing years ago when I started competing, they would often say, well, when you carb up, don't take salt. And then as you study physiology and nutrition, well, you realize, well, that actually makes zero sense, actually, because you actually have sodium dependent glucose transporters in your gut. And the key term is sodium dependent. So if you're trying to carb up with no sodium in your system, those sodium dependent glucose transporters are not going to work. And then same thing with fluid. You have to have the fluid in addition to that. Otherwise, you kind of get that scenario where you just talked about. Now you have no salt, you have no fluid. How are you going to digest all that food that you ate? You're not. So you don't have the ability to transport that, which means you're gonna feel bloated. You're gonna look bloated, and you're not going to be able to digest the food, and you're not going to be able to transport it accordingly to where it needs to go.
My last, the guy I prepped last year, he was amazed at how much food I had him eating the 24 hours before the show. We started off with clean carbs, and then I'm like, okay, we did that for like 3 meals, and I'm like, okay, go eat a hamburger and fries. Came back and like another clean meal. Let's go eat another hamburger and fries. And he looked big and full and shredded on stage, striated glutes and the whole bit. But he was peeled, like fat wise. He had all the fat off, and he had been dieting.
He was ready
for a long time before that.
Yeah, he was ready. He was ready. At the end of the day, when you're ready, you're ready. I mean, when you're if somebody tells you you're holding water, more than likely, like I said, is you just need to lose another 5 to 7 pounds of body fat is what you need to lose.
What I found, now that I've been coaching people and not competing myself, I think I'm a better at coaching than being a competitor. As far as like being my own coach, well, I've had some coaches that were not the greatest, namely at Nasser El Somebody. He almost ruined me. But when you coach yourself, like you don't see yourself, you see things that aren't there. So
Yeah.
now, like I have a competitor right now. He's getting ready for USA's. We're about 8 weeks out right now. No, Saturday's going to be 7 weeks out. Tomorrow's 7 weeks out. And he told me, a friend of his told him that he's holding water. And I looked at him and I said, dude, you are not holding water. This is fat. And I grabbed the skin on his belly. This is fat. This is not water. I can't grab a fucking 2 inches of fat. I mean, of water. You can
Right.
tell the difference.
Exactly. Absolutely, you can tell the difference. Yeah, and that's what it is. It's like, and at 7 weeks out, he should have a little bit of fat left to lose. I mean,
Right.
that's the reality. It's like he's on track to, and he probably needs to lose another, 7 to maybe 12 pounds of body fat at 7 weeks out. That's perfectly normal.
Right. But he's like, my friend told me I'm holding, his friend, by the way, he's not a bodybuilder. He's like, never listen to your friends.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think to kind of round those out, to me, those were the two biggest things that I wanted to talk about. Like the two most dangerous, the DNP and the diuretics, I think are the two most abused compounds that are used incorrectly, used unnecessarily, and I think pose the biggest threat. In terms of the other PEDs, yes, they carry their own risks. Yes, they can cause long-term harm, but the harm is rarely acute. It's not like like it can make changes to your heart and other organs and other systems, but it happens slow and consistently, and you can monitor those things and try to mitigate those risks by doing appropriate lab work, doing appropriate testing, and watching those biomarkers over time, so then you can minimize those risks. But the ones that pose the biggest threat, and you're going to die potentially acutely, are the two that we talked about: the DNP and the diuretics.
Well, there's one other that I don't think it's nearly as dangerous as those two, but one compound that I think is abused is trembolone. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is I think people just take way too much of it for too long. And I know
Yes.
I was guilty of this. When I was young, I loved trembolone. I felt aggressive. I felt strong. And I never went like crazy high on it. I never took like a gram of trembolone. But even like 400 or 500 milligrams, it gave me a really bad temper. And all of my injuries that I've had over the years, I could basically link most of them to trembolone because I was, you psychologically feel like you can lift anything. So I think I was pushing like more weight than I could. And, it psychologically makes you feel like you could just push anything. So if you push 5 or 10% over your max for a number of reps, probably something's going to break.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it poses a lot of musculoskeletal risks, primarily to the tendons and the muscles, because you are stronger, but the soft tissue can't handle that yet. So you have to really kind of hold the horses back a little bit and let them kind of get used to that. And then I think the other main thing is, just the neurotoxicity of the compound over time. I mean, it's a very strong compound that can create a lot of side effects, right? So to me, it's one of those that should be used, with care, and if you use it, in short stints, and then also in the minimal effective dosage is key. I think, some of these people that are pushing, like you said, 400, 600, 800 milligrams a week. I mean, that's absolutely insane. It's unnecessary. And then if you're doing it, for 10, 15, 20 weeks, that's absolutely insane and unnecessary too.
Well, I stopped doing it years ago because it just messes. first of all, it gives me a bad temper, and I don't need a worse temper. And I had gotten in trouble in the past just because of that. And the other thing is, it would mess with my sleep and my digestion. I wouldn't want to eat. And those two things are critical if you're trying to, bodybuild. You need to eat and sleep.
You have to do both. Yep.
So if you're
Yep.
not sleeping good and you're not eating well, then you're good. The drug's not going to take place of that.
Right.
And I even tried microdosing it, taking like 10, 20 milligrams, like 2-3 times a week, or not, actually 3 or 4 times a week pre-workout. And even on that, I found myself getting irritable more than normal. And it just I got a little stronger initially, but I just didn't see the benefit of it that much. Now, I do think there's a time to use it, and that would be right before a show.
Yeah.
And I think if you've not been using it in most of the time, then when you do put it in before a show, even at low dosage, you're really gonna feel the effect of it because you're not used to it. And I think I'm gonna have my guys running like 150 milligrams a week, and we're talking the last 4 or 5 weeks before a show, and that's plenty. Because I do think it boosts your metabolism a little bit. It'll keep you a little bit more anabolic during the really hard dieting part. But you gotta watch it, that you don't break something during that time training.
Yeah, and I think I mean it'll help retain some of your hard end muscle mass at that point in time. So I mean in that regard it is good, but like you said, a little bit goes a long way, and then really it should be kind of like the last tool that you pull out of the tool bag. And again, some guys may not even need it. At the end of the day, some guys may not even need it.
No, I mean, I believe you could probably get totally shredded using like Primo, Masteron, Winstrol,
Yeah,
without that. I just,
yeah.
I just, I think it'll probably give you a little bit more fullness. And if you need to lose a little bit more body fat, it'll help at the very end. But like I said, you don't need a whole lot.
Yeah, it's just become such a social media hyped up drug, and then you have these people making their names, with the drug, and they hype it up to something it's really not, and they try to make it cool and trendy, and then that's where you can see that's irresponsible and dangerous because I mean nothing annoys me more than hearing some 15-year-old kid using something like this because their favorite influencer is using it and or popularizing it, and who knows if they're even using it. They may or may not be, but because it's trendy and it's cool, and look at me, then that's what they see. So yeah, I think it's very, very, to me, it's a very irritable subject in that regard because I just see it just so misused and so hyped up to something that it's really not.
What is your feeling on the new? A lot of these coaches right now are pushing Masteron year round, off season, not just pre-contest, like all the time.
Well, I mean, it is a relatively safer drug. Of course, it doesn't build a ton of mass, but it is that it does not build mass, but it can complement some of the other drugs well. The nice thing is when you look at your health biomarkers on Masteron, similar to Primo in that regard, you don't really see a lot of major negative side effects. So it's something that can complement other things. So I think there's a time and a place for it, and it is a relatively more benign drug compared to some of the others. So I think it's got a place, and it just got to see if it works for the individual.
Well, we have one particular person. He claims he's a doctor. I don't know if he really is, but he claims that Masteron is the most anabolic agent. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I think it's a great hardener before a show, but I've never found it to be a mass builder, not even as good as Primo.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are dose dependent, right? So, the higher the dosage, and that's where you kind of have to fine tune it is like, you may be able to tolerate, 600 milligrams or 800 milligrams, or maybe a gram of Masteron. And when you're running it at that dosages, I mean, I've never run it on its own, right? But when you're running it at those dosages, then you may see, some of these uh, positive effects in terms of muscle building. And then because it's tolerable, then you may be able to not see the same side effects in other areas. But again, I think there's the reality is with a lot of these, it's a lot of hearsay. We don't have a lot of. I mean, there's no data on it. I mean, most of the research that was done on Masteron, was done on breast cancer for women. So when you actually look at the medical literature, there's not a lot of information. It's certainly not for muscle building purposes.
Well, I found just for myself, DHTs are great for a contest because they dry me out and make me hard, but they suck on my joints. Whenever I take those, I'll within a very short period of time, I will have achy tendons. My knees will hurt, my lower back will hurt, my elbows will hurt, shoulders will start hurting, and actually there was a stuff called it's the fast it D it's a EQ that it's not EQ, but it was made from EQ. It's like a fast acting. You know what I'm talking about? It's kind of a rare one.
I don't think so. No.
Um, I don't know why I just blanked out on it. It's DHB, dihydroboldenon.
Okay.
So
Okay.
on one of these message boards, one of these gurus guys was like, dihydroboldenon. They were all saying it's going to increase insulin sensitivity. You're going to get super strong. All this, it all sounds great. I'm like, well, this sounds great. Increase insulin sensitivity. I'm going to get strong. Like, sounds like the best thing ever. So I was taking it at about 300 milligrams a week. And for about 6 weeks, my strength shot through the roof. All my weights that I could do for like 5 reps, I could do for 10. In that, like my strength, like in not weight, but my strength in reps doubled in that time.
Interesting.
And then right at 6 weeks, all hell broke loose. I tore something on my shoulder. My knees and back started aching, and just everything was hurting so bad that I couldn't even train. I mean, just picking up a weight hurt. My whole body was inflamed from this stuff. And I stopped taking it, of course. It literally took almost 6 months for that shit to go away. And even after 6 months, I was still hurting. Every time I trained, everything freaking hurt. My shoulder was still hurting. Everything was hurting. And the only way I fixed it is I started taking nandrolone. And that lubricated, put fluid back into my joints or whatever. And it solved that issue. But 6 weeks of that, and I was wrecked. And then I heard other people saying that they were really toxic, bad kidney markers were bad on their blood work and other things as well. So I still have 10 brand new bottles of that shit that I haven't touched, and it's been over 2 years.
Yeah, I'm very wary with a lot of some of the more exotic compounds, just because I mean, we just don't know a lot about them, right? And then so I'm very wary with a lot of those. So I always try to kind of go over things that you think we know more of and more about, and ideally, if we have some clinical data on some of these things, then that makes it a lot better because we actually have something to draw on. Of course, I mean, if you want to experiment, on yourself, that's all on you. That's just not my cup of tea, for myself.
Someone asked if I felt lethargy or toxic. I felt amazing. Like I said, for 6 weeks, my strength was going through the roof. My sex drive was going through the roof. I was just like, I felt like I was on Trembolone without the anger.
Interesting.
A little different mental attitude. It did affect me mentally. It did on Trembolone. I would get the anger, like a quick temper. On this, I had I don't give a shit. Like I felt numb. I like emotionally. for whatever reason, it somehow affected me to where like I just did not care about anything. But my
Interesting.
strength went up, and then, like I said, until 6 weeks, and then all hell broke loose, and everything was just hurting. So,
Well, Larry, I want to say thanks so much for bringing me on. It's been a pleasure as always, and I'm glad we're able to chat. I'm sure you and I could talk for probably days on here
one
about
other
a lot
thing
of
I wanted to
stuff.
ask your opinion about. So all the rage right now is on retatrutide, which is a new GLP-1 agonist that supposedly has something to do with glucagon. They're saying this one, Nick Walker claims he took it before his shows and he said it helped. And he said that they say it increases insulin sensitivity and doesn't upset your stomach like the other ones. I haven't used it, and I haven't had anybody use it, so I'm just hearing what people are saying. What is your thoughts?
I think there's a lot of research that needs to still be done on all of the GLP agonists. I think as a bodybuilder, I think it's probably. I mean, again, if you're one that likes to venture and experiment, then that's all power to you. But for me, I mean, there is some research right now showing that it actually decreases lean body mass. Um, and when you see that, for me, it's counterintuitive to what we're trying to do, right? So if you're obese and you're trying to lose weight, and it doesn't matter if you're losing fat or muscle mass. I mean, because even with the clinical populations, we're trying to preserve lean body mass as much as possible. So those are some of the concerns with a lot of these GLP agonists. So I think there's still a lot to be researched on all of those. So I think it's premature as a bodybuilder to use it. I would not recommend it as a bodybuilder at this point in time. Again, there's a lot of other things that you can do to improve insulin sensitivity and to reduce body fat effectively without pulling out this potential tool that may have negative consequences for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, my thoughts is I want to wait and see before I'm ready to jump into that something like that. I don't want another DHB scenario where everything looks great for a few weeks and then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just too new. We don't know enough about it. Not yet.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
After we see, a few people died, then maybe we'll decide we don't like it.
It's sad, but yeah, I mean, there's some people that are I don't know, more adventurous than I would want to be, and more power to them. But again, I tend to be a little more cautious, and I really try to look out for my health and my longevity. I think that's really important.
I think we all get that as we get older. We realize, we want to stick around a little bit longer, so we start caring about that stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely.
When
You
we're young,
realize you're not so invincible. When you're in your 20s and even in your 30s, you think you're invincible, and then you realize you're not so invincible.
right. So where can people reach you? You have anything you want to promote or anything?
Well, if you want to find me on social media, Dr. GFit at Dr. GFit, or my YouTube channel. I have a Dr. GFit YouTube channel where, again, I'm posting stuff. In fact, I should bring you on to my YouTube channel as well. We can have a similar conversation. But yes, and I am actually in the process of writing an ebook on body recomposition. That's going to be out hopefully over the next few months. So it's going to be a pretty low price, but it'll teach you, how you can lose body fat, gain muscle at the same time effectively. Not so much for the bodybuilder who's been bodybuilding a long time, who's already shredded and has a lot of muscle, but more for the average individual, especially someone who's just trying to get into shape. That way they can really kind of get the best of both worlds.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It was great talking to you again, and always good to see you. And
Good.
definitely out. Just let me know when, and I'll be on.
All right. Sounds good, my friend. Have a good one.
All right. Everybody have a
Bye
great
bye.
weekend. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave your comments. And we have a sale going on right now with the all the HD muscle products. So you can go to the website at undergroundperformancegym.com and check those out.
Bye, everyone. Thanks, Larry.
I believe that the fires were cast upon, on the flames we shall become. I believe in a common calling.